now hand over to Dil, who did a couple of webinars for us on the Party Wall, probably the best part of 3 years ago, because it was in the midst of lockdown. So Dil's back to give an overview of the Party Wall. Over to you to give us an overview of the Party Wall Act.
Brilliant. Thank you, Paul. Lovely to be back. It was really interesting during 2020, and that I think is the photograph from little graphic from their initial webinar. So it's lovely to be back, and it's amazing 3 years of interesting experience. Also had a really interesting question when I did last set of webinars about CPD, but I'll go into that later on. My name's Dil Gujral. That's my email. That's the best way to contact me. Interesting experience last 3 years. So let's see what we've done so far. So, quick intro to myself. My name's Dil Gujral. I am the Chief Party Wall Surveyor at 1996 Party Wall. Yeah, it sounds glamorous, but it's an interesting topic, but a lot of stuff that goes in the background. Just a quick intro to me. I've been doing it for 15 years now. I can't believe that sometimes. There's my book. I wrote a couple of articles, and I've also created, I think it was the first, inspired by the previous webinars, the first totally online CPD video for Party Wall stuff. So let's get going. Now, when Paul asked me to do this presentation, one thing that occurred, and I've been talking about Party Walls, at least in conferences, for the last 5 or 6 years. Not doing the basics is the biggest cause of problems around. So I'm going to go through the intro of the process, intro to the Act. I've got a lot to get through, so I'm going to talk really fast. So I'm going to go through the basics. So like with anything, doing the basics is 80% of the battle. I'm going to go through the process, the overview, and what I want to talk about, especially with your webinar, Paul, is the specific projects that are most of interest. And I'm guessing for your group, it's about possibly having rear extensions. And those are the section numbers in the Act that you really need to be aware of. And stair lifts was the other thing you've mentioned in the past, where people need to put in stair lifts or lifts of, I don't know if you guys put in lifts of the other type, but those two issues. So those are the two specific projects. And in this sort of world, in this, I guess it's a little bubble that I sort of live in, I work out, is there any tips, tricks or traps is there any tips I can give you guys? Is there any tricks that I can help you with? And is there any traps that I can help you avoid? Basics of the Party Wall Act. Okay, let's do a little intro and an overview. So the first question with anything is, why undertake the Party Wall process? Firstly, it is the law. And I get this question at least 3 times a week. I've got planning. Do I need to take the Party Wall process? It is the law. Fortunately or unfortunately, however you want to phrase it. And that's quite a common theme. Now, one of the things that I'll explain during this little presentation is the term called Schedule of Condition Survey. That's basically, the way to think about it is it's a photographic survey of your neighbour's property, of the neighbouring property that you're doing works on. And that's to help protect the building owner doing the works from false and malicious claims. We've actually got one going on right now where this is the case. Okay, one of the other reasons you want to do the Party Wall process and do it properly, we've come across a number of times where the projects get stopped midstream because they haven't got the Party Wall process done correctly. So that's not good news for the homeowners, the developers, the financiers, and in your case, your clients. That's what you call people you're helping now, clients. This is one of those laws that's a strict responsibility on the property owner. So if you're helping manage it, if you're an architect, if you're a builder, it's not down to you, it's down to the homeowner, or the owner of the property. And most importantly of all, unfortunately, over the last 2 or 3 years, I had to get involved in too many legal actions. Please do not get yourself in that state. That's all I can reiterate. It's not very good. And hopefully, don't know if we've got any lawyers. We don't really want to give the money to the lawyers. Okay, so let's do a quick intro into the Act. It only applies to England and Wales. So if you're over the border, got some folks made the law, the Scottish independent guys must have got and said, no, we don't want to be part of it. So it's only England and Wales, just to reiterate. Okay. Now, it is an Act of Parliament. The full title is Party Wall, etc. Act 1996. And got to remember 2 elements of this Act, the 2 purposes behind that. It's to enable building works to be done. It's not there to stop you doing works. It's to enable building works, but it's also to protect the adjoining owner, so your neighbour's building. It's sort of 2 sides of the coin. And the way it works is it's a dispute resolution procedure, trying to keep people out of court. Or at least that's how it started. Okay. So this is quite important. So write these terms down, and I'm going to try and keep them as brief as possible, but these are important terms, and I'll use these during the presentation, so I thought I'd go through. So building owner is one party. It's the owner of the building who wants to do the works. So in our cases, of the participants, you might be doing it on behalf of the person who owns the home, but you're still doing it in their name. So that's building owner. There's only one building owner. Now, on the other side, you've got adjoining owners, and there's actually multiple classes of adjoining owners. This, I guess, is one of the most complex laws I've sort of looked at. Okay, so first of all, potentially next door you could have a freeholder, and you could also have a leaseholder. Now, leaseholders are leases of more than 1 year. You could have someone who's done one of these clever things, and they have rights to receive profits, sort of that gives them rights to have profits, or in a trust, or various things that happen now creatively in property business nowadays. And if you exchange on a property, you're contracted to buy land, you're also one of the notifiable owners. It doesn't apply to short tenants, council tenants, and mortgage companies. So you don't have to give those guys notice, just to make you aware. The one you want to focus on is freeholder, and keep it simple. I usually just talk about the freeholders. Okay. So I used to say it was a two-stage process, but we've sort of moved on. It's better to think of it as a 3-step process. So stage 1 is to assess your project for the notifiable works. You then do stage 2, which I'll go through in a minute. And then stage 3 is decided by the adjoining owner. It's a little bit strange, but this is the best way I've come up with explaining this. A lot of people think about their project. I'm going to build an extension, or I'm going to build a loft, or I'm going to put a stair lift in. In the party wall area, we do like your projects, but we're just focused on the notifiable works. So you have to look at your project, focus in on the notifiable works, and deal with those issues. Stage 2 is started by the person who owns the building owner, or on behalf of your client. The key error that's made here is people talk about, I sent a party wall agreement to my neighbor, they haven't signed it. We need to little bit of focus on terminology. What you're actually doing is serving a notice, which starts the whole process off. The framework is similar to other pieces of legislation. They're probably just picked up, filled in the boxes, and created new legislation. I'm not going to paraphrase who said that one day. So you've looked at your project. You've got, these are my notifiable works. You've created notices, or you've got someone to create notices for you. You've served them to the building owner. Now, here's the little bit that's strange, and it's difficult for people to get their head around. Stage 3 of this process is actually decided by your neighbor, and it's only according to their response that you do the next stage. It depends on what they come back with. So they can ask for a schedule of condition, which is survey of their property, very similar to renting a car. They'll go around, take photographs, and people think that's all we do all day long, go around taking photographs and disappear. But that's where the fun begins, yeah? This is largely photographic, similar to renting a car. It protects the building owner from false and malicious claims. We've actually got one now going on where they're arguing about if the damage was existing or if it's after and it's due to the works. So it's there to protect you or your clients if they're doing building works. The other thing they can ask for is a party wall award. That's what people term as a party wall agreement. So that's the term. The legal term is it's an award. It's a legal document which sets out your rights and your responsibilities and those of your neighbors. There's also we usually put a little procedure of what happens if there's damage. And it happens. Sometimes it's not anybody's fault. It's just due to most of the housing stock we live in. It's probably 1930s, 40s, so it's quite old, and it's due to variations in building. So it can be nobody's fault sometimes. So for each adjoining owner, now, if you've got a standard terrace house, you're probably going to have 2 owners on each side. So this process applies to both adjoining owners, and the output will be different to each. They can dissent. Now, dissent doesn't mean they can stop your works. Dissent just means they're dissenting to your notice. Then there's a process whereby we reach agreement, which is they can either use the surveyor in the notice, one surveyor, agreed surveyor, or they can appoint their own surveyor. Now, in residential settings, the output is very much similar, whether they use their own surveyor or they use an agreed surveyor. The only difference is costs go up. That's the bit that nobody likes, really. But again, the output is there'll usually be a schedule of condition and a party wall award. That's it. When that's done, you're ready to start works. Now, assuming all the adjoining owners or notifiable owners have done, you're ready to start works. It's advisable to wait till all the adjoining owners have finished their process. Not always possible, but advisable. Now, one of my favorite bugbears, and the reason we get most of our questions, what happens if there's no response from the neighbors? So this is where I talk about the 10-4 process. And number of questions I get on this are, it's sort of like the 80-20 rule. It's far outweighs everything else. So, and I'm going to explain why people don't understand this process. It's called a 10-4 process. Basically, once you send a notice, you send a reminder letter, and if they don't reply to your letter, you have to appoint a surveyor on their behalf. And in which case, we can only request a schedule of condition. We can't make someone do it. And then if I think about 60% of the time, we get no response. So we have to go ahead and do an award. And sometimes we have to do a survey afterwards, after the award's been sent along. So I talked about the 10-4 process. Now, let me run through this, and later on I'm going to explain why this is not very much highlighted. It's the biggest problem I've ever come across. Yeah. So here's the steps. Serve a notice. Now, usually you have 14 days in the notice, but I put +2 because you need to allow 2 days for the service of notice. And here's a little tip. Do it certificate of posting. Do not send it recorded delivery. If you've had no response, you need to send a reminder letter. We call it a 10-4 letter in the trade, I guess. Now, this is a 10-day letter, but again, you need to allow 2 extra days for it to get through the postage system. No recorded delivery, please. If you've still had no response, you need to appoint a surveyor on their behalf. And at that point, the surveyor representing them will write to them and say, look, come on, guys, give us access or we're going to do an award. And the process carries on. The award gets served and you're ready to start works. Now, this is part of the process where it enables building works to take place. This is the reason why they put this process in. So a neighbour can't frustrate you from doing your works by simply not engaging or replying. We always have a couple of these going on in the background. Now, if you're the adjoining owner and you've missed your notice and you've missed your letter and a surveyor's written to you saying, well, we've appointed a surveyor on your behalf, it's best for you to engage and get your property surveyed. Now, this is probably not going to apply to you so much. It's more if your clients have had this notice come in and the question is, well, how can they do that? They're making me have a surveyor. They're actually looking after your interests. Now, if you're a building owner, i.e. if your clients or your patients, I'm guessing clients is the way you term it nowadays, they need to carry this process out. Otherwise, the work might be stopped midstream. And I've had too many of these going on at the moment. Okay, so project examples. Let's try and focus in on project examples. Now, the presentation earlier talked about speed of implementation. Unfortunately, this stuff is not fast. There's only 4 exemptions in the Act, and even the royal family is not exempt. So surprisingly, it's the lawyers that are exempt. So the 4 ends of the barristers. It's amazing how they got themselves exempt. Right, okay. If you're going to do a rear extension, you're probably going to need these 2 types of notices. There's section 1,5 and the 6 and 6/1. These are the ones you want to focus on. Take notes, write this down. There are 3 things you need to make each of these section notices valid. And number of times people miss this, mainly the architects, I lose count. Okay. So the first thing you need to show is the site and the depth of the excavation you're going to do. The building or the structure you're going to build, i.e. your rear extension. Now that the middle one is standard. Everybody has that in it. That's the drawing plans. And the third one is the one that all the architects nearly miss, and they have it because they have to buy it to put the planning application in. And that's the site plan. So take these 3 down and make sure whoever's your architect gives you these so you can serve a valid notice. Now, I talked about a section drawing. Yeah, I'm going to illustrate that in a minute. Section 1. This is section 1 of the Act, and there's 3 types of section 1 notice. You've got the section 1.5, where the foundation is totally on the building owner's land. You have a section 1.2, party wall built on the line of junction. This isn't the one that's commonly used, but it's the best one if the neighbours are happy and can agree it together. And section 1.6 is almost obsolete, but it's in the Act. So that's why I go through it, and you need to understand the difference. The problem with options 2 and 3, i.e. 1.2 and 1.6, is the footings could cause a trespass. I'm going to go through this to illustrate this. Solution is you should always start with section 1.5 notice. I'm going to show you an example of the drawings. Make sure you tell your architect this is what they need to have. Here's the rules for section 1.5. Take a minute to write this down. These are the rules, and make sure your architects get this right. So for the foundation, you want to leave no gap between the foundation and the boundary and make sure it doesn't go over the boundary. Again, there's no gap on the boundary and make sure it doesn't go over, because you'll get into trouble for trespassing. And the roof, again, you can guess what I'm going to say, and no prizes for it. Make sure there's no gap on the boundary and you're not going beyond the boundary. That's a section 1.5 compliance scheme. Let me give you an example of this. So this is section 1.6. It's in the Act. You'll read it, but you're going to waste your time. So make sure they don't do this. And architects love doing this sort of arrangement. They love building it. Have a little nib projection at the bottom of the wall. That's where your foundations project over. No. If the boundary is running on your wall, your foundations are going to trespass. Don't do it, right? No, is the only way I could focus on. Here's an example of a section 1-2 where you're building astride the boundary, i.e. both the owners are going to share a wall. Now this is useful. It means the neighbor can build their extension, use your wall, and they'll have to pay you section 11 costs. But in terms of getting it through with the neighbors, it's not very practical, and it's very rarely used where the two neighbors agree, mainly in the cases where one neighbor says, we're going to build an extension. The other one says, well, that's interesting. We're thinking of doing one next year. Can we use your wall? That's what you'd like in an ideal world, but it doesn't happen. I don't know why. And it's got worse since the lockdown is the only comment I can make. So this is an example of a section 1.5 drawing. So if you look at the foundation, they're right on the edge next to the boundary. There's no gap. If you look at the wall, the second bit, there's no gap with the boundary and the wall. And the third bit, this represents a roof. There's no gap. There's no projecting cobblestone or coping stone stop the rain dripping over. And the reason this is the most useful section in the Act, it means that you have rights of access onto your neighbour's land in order to build that wall. Now, I appreciate for single story extensions, no big deal. You can build it overhand and the neighbor can look at a rubbish wall. So for single story area extensions, it's not such a big deal. But wherever you've got projects that are 2-3 stories, if you can't put scaffolding on the neighbor's land, you can't actually build those things. So this is why this is the most useful section. Now, that's the rear section, rear extension, section 6.1. So these are the things you need to do to make sure you have a section 6.1 compliant notice. Right. First thing is, if your neighbor has a building within 3 meters or a foundation within 3 meters, and you're going to be doing excavation at a lower level than their excavation. If your neighbor's building is within 3 meters and you're going to be digging lower, then you need to issue them a section 6.1 notice. Now, the second one of that is more important, because when you're on site, you can easily see if neighbor's got a building within 3 meters. So they're going to have a foundation. That's the easy one. The one that's hard to understand is how deep their foundations are. And I'm going to give you a little cheat test for that. So here's an illustration of the section 6.1 rule. Okay. Remember, it's a 2-part test and you have to meet both parts, not just one. So if it's within 3 meters, the neighbor's building is within 3 meters and your foundations are going to go lower. Now you're sitting there thinking, that's clever, Dil. How am I going to know how deep are his foundations? Rule of thumb. Most things that were built before 1980 have a lower foundation. It's actually 76 when the heat wave happened, they changed the building regs. So 76 to 80, most buildings built before that are likely to have a lower foundation. Yeah. And stuff that's built newer. And I was discussing a project with someone yesterday, and I asked him, when he said a townhouse, I said, when was your building built? He said 2012. I said, well, we've got to look at your foundations. We should be able to get them online, and likely that they're going to have deep foundations. So you're not going to be going lower. So don't forget, this is the first way of not having to give a party wall notice. Might not be good for party wall surveyors, but it helps to increase the speed of your project. Okay, now here's another example of a project that I think you guys use most of all. It's lifts. And here, the type of notice we need to look at is a section 2 notice that's served in a section 3. It's a little bit of complexity, but write down section 2/3 on there. So here's an example. Imagine this is your client's house. You're going to put a stair lift, yeah? Your property, terrace house, rear extension. You're going to do something to the party wall. If your next door neighbor is a house that's not split into flats, that's only one owner. So you're going to be working on the party wall. Now, if on the other side, you've got a neighbor who's had a house converted into flats, say, for example, you may have potentially multiple owners you need to give notices to. So it'll be the freeholder and the leaseholder you're doing works next to. Now, here's a phrase that isn't actually in this presentation. It's called de minimis. Write that down. That means minor works. So you'll come across it in the government booklet. It talks about de minimis works or minor works. So things like putting up a bookshelf, putting up electrical socket is said to be de minimis. It's actually a little bit more intricate than that. It all depends on the impact that your works are going to have on the neighbor's property. So if you've got a 9-inch wall, You're going to put a little screw in it, or you're going to put a little socket in it, minor piece of work. Now, if the wall is a 4-inch or 112 mil and you're going to cut out half the brick, that's going to have much more of an impact. So it's all dependent upon the type of work and the construction of your party wall. As with most things, don't take them at face value. You need to look at the details sometimes. So are there any tips? Are there any tricks that you can do? Or are there any traps that you can avoid getting into? Here's a list of the 7 top mistakes made by professionals. And by that, I mean designers, architects, possibly project managers who are managing the project. First of all, they don't tell their client that they might need a party wall because they're just the architect. They're going to do their stuff and go. But it doesn't help you build the building. Adjoining owner details. Now, and part of the reason is this advice in the government booklet, which says, have a chat with your neighbour over the fence, give them this notice, and the sun's going to come out and the wall's all hunky-dory. That's not real practice, actually. What you need to do is to search the land registry, find out the details, and serve the notice on their registered address. This is one I see all the time. And this is where architects are trying to be helpful. They'll say, listen, we've done your drawing. We love the extension. We've put all this stuff in. And oh, by the way, you're going to need to do party wall notices. Here you are. Follow the advice. Give them to your neighbour. And then the people don't know what to do with it. Watch out for architects doing that, right? And again, back to a friend, the 10-4 process. Architects don't understand this. The simple reason is the government left it out their booklet and the guidance. Sorry, government. I'm not trying to riff on you. Right. Make sure you complete the process. I 10-4 process, serve the letter, appoint the surveyor. Close that door. And here's my favorite problem or mistake people make. They'll send notices by recorded delivery. Do not send them recorded delivery. Just go to the post office, ask for a certificate of posting or proof of posting. The proof of posting is actually free. Recorded delivery costs you more money. Now, I'm not trying to be a cheapskate and save the odd pound or two that the recorded delivery costs you. The reason is, if you send something by recorded delivery, the postman comes along, knocks at the door, no one's in, drop a card. That notice hasn't been served legally. Whereas if you take the cheaper option, certificate of posting or proof of postage, by the fact that it's gone into the Royal Mail system, it's deemed to be served. So that's an important error there, important understanding. Again, action the 10-4 process. I cannot say this too many times. This is the biggest mistake people make. So I say, in addition, hand deliver only depends. When you read the website guidance, they'll say hand deliver it, have a chat over the fence. The problem with doing that is you haven't got a certificate of posting or a proof of postage. You can't do the 10-4 process with certainty and produce it in court if you need to. Remember, this is a legal process we're looking at. So behind the red X is the government guidance on it. Now, they updated it just before the lockdown. Instead of a red cover, they put a white cover. And now you have to get it off the website. But it's actually incomplete. So I sat there and I thought, why are so many people asking the question? I've sent a notice. What do I do next? And then I read through the government booklet. It's got some great drawings, fantastic illustration, fantastic explanations. Nothing on the 10-4 process. It's totally missing. So we produced our little booklet. I'm happy to send it to you if you send me an email. That's a free gift for everybody on here. We'll call it a little prize. Send me an email, put prize or free gift on there. Just say one set of notices. We'll send you a set of templates. It's a simplified set of templates with a checklist and do's and don'ts. But I still have to give you a warning. Even with our templates that are great, people still find it difficult to serve notices. Now, when Paul invited me, I thought, let me see if I can, I've had this idea for a while, and this is sort of the reason I'm beginning to execute this. This is what I call the 7 secret strategies. And I'm still writing this little PDF. Number 7, because it's in reverse order. It's a countdown. So I've just done the 7th one. The other 6, I've got to work out how to explain. Normally, people put in a planning application, and this applies mainly to PD applications. So most extensions will be done under PD. They'll put in a planning application. Once they get the result, then they'll think about the party wall process. This is the reasoning behind it. This is what they call unsolicited approaches. Imagine you're putting in your application on the Monday. By Friday, the neighbours on both sides would have received letters from other surveyors, somewhere between 12 to 16 letters. They're probably going to sign up by one of those guys. That means the building owner is going to incur extra costs. There's a little bit of naughtiness in the industry. It's not prohibited, but a lot of surveyors do it. And I thought to myself, is there a way we can move the needle in our favor? And this is what I came up with. This only applies to PD stuff, so permitted development. So if you're going to do an extension under permitted development, you know you're going to get the planning, extensions, lofts, outhouses, those sort of things. You know that they're going to give you planning. And this is the approach that helps you move the needle in the building owner's favor. So once you've got a first draft of your scheme, it doesn't have to be final. Start the party wall process, serve the notices. Then you could carry on finishing your planning application, your PD application, submit it and let the two run in parallel. And here's a little, I guess from the earlier presentation, this might be a little bit of bad news, but it's better to have the bad out than sort of hidden away. I actually asked this question to a barrister in the field, and his answer was surprising to me. And he even said, I was surprised when I looked into this. So under section 1012, an award may determine the right to execute the works, time and manner of executing the works, and any other matters arising. But this is really important. You can only decrease the period of the notice if the adjoining owner gives it to you in writing. So this is why most extensions have a 1 month notice period. Stuff on the party wall, i.e. section 2 and 3 notice, are 2 months notice period. Theoretically, you can only decrease it. There might not be the news you need or the answer you're looking for, but it's one you need to understand. So last time I did a webinar, I really enjoyed doing those webinars. The number one question I had was, do you have a CPD? It got me thinking. So we looked at it and we created a CPD. It's 3 hours of CPD purely on party wall. And I thought I'd let you guys have a look at it and offer it to you. And then I thought, look, you guys are doing some good work for the community, for people who need it. Can I give you some extra CPD training or your group and your mission? So there's my CPD. It's online. I think it was the first online training that runs around the clock. You can do it on any device, phone, tablet, whatever you like, probably anywhere in the world, anytime you like. It's a really interesting project for us. So I thought I'd put some extra bonuses with that. If you get one of these, I'll give you a 30-minute consultation on Zoom. Have a look at your project individually. Also, this is an act that's misunderstood. So I'll even come and do a Zoom questionnaire for you, 60 minutes, bring your people, up to 99 people. I'll even do a webinar for you. I love doing these webinars. They're great because I love sharing stuff and it's just passing on knowledge and getting rid of the misguidances, and hopefully people will be able to employ the act quicker and better. So I'll even do a Zoom webinar for you. And this is my favorite activity in case someone hasn't noticed. I'll produce a Q&A on my YouTube channel for the question you ask. Right now, it's a little bit of a value, so that all comes £1,200. But for your community pool, I'm going to offer it for £99. All you need to do is send me an email, just put CPD in the subject line, and we'll sort out how we do this for you. The reason it's not as automated as we like, we're actually moving systems to a different online provider. Okay. And then I thought, I'm going to produce this top secret 7 secret strategies probably at the end of March, in April somewhere. And it's something that I think is that important that we're not actually going to sell it. We're only going to, it's going to be priceless. It's not for sale, but you have to sign an NDA to get it, because some of the stuff we talk about is a little bit pushing the edge, but it's there to help people move their projects quicker. And that's all we want. I understand the Party Wall Act gets in the way of projects. It's not how it should be. It's not fair. So I'm going to try and do whatever I can to move that along. And part of doing these webinars is the reason I do this sort of stuff. So there you go. There's my details. Send me an email if you want a free gift, or if you want to look at the CPD thing, send me an email. I'll get back to you. That's it. Have we got any questions, Paul?
There are a few in the chat, Bill. So
great. Let's go for it.
If you want to dive into the chat, there's a few there. Yeah, I think good news that we've got some resources. If anybody wants to get in touch with you for £99, that seems a good offer. And I suppose you're thinking you're doing us a guide for the website, aren't you? So that there will be
yes,
on the Foundation's website fairly soon of a lot of the stuff you've talked about today.